Hello everyone, welcome to Concise Nursing. This is where nursing is made so simple for everyone. Aspiring nurses, general nurses on the ward, nursing educators, or even nursing students. So today we are looking at what we call anatomy and physiology, as it's written over here. We have anatomy and physiology for all the body systems, but today we are looking at the general anatomy and physiology. So if you are new to this channel, just subscribe to the button so that anytime we upload a video, you'll be the first hand to receive it. Alright, let's jump straight into action. Anatomy and physiology. Now, anatomy. Anatomy comes from the Greek word anatom, which means to cut up or to dissect. So anatomy in broad terms or in simple terms means just to cut up. Okay, so it's from a Greek word we call anatom. Okay. So just to dissect. Dissect or to cut up. Now what this means is that the human body can be cut into various parts, okay, so that we can identify specific portions of the body or specific parts of the body so that we can study its action and how it works individually. Okay, so the study of all these systems one after the other is what we term as anatomy. Now it's a science discipline that investigates the body structures and its relations with other structures. Thus, the art of separating the parts of an organism in order to ascertain their position, relations, and structures. The knowledge is gained basically through observation. So we can split the human body into various parts or various organs or various systems, and then after naming it, you observe it, and then basically anatomy has to do with observation. Okay, so you observe its relationships with other systems or other organs in the human body. Now quickly, let's jump into what we call physiology. Now physiology is from the Greek word physis, which basically means the study of nature. Okay, so in simple terms, this is the science discipline that deals with the vital processes or functions of the various body parts. So all these body parts that we have individual functions that they perform. Talk of the heart, the lungs, the brain, or any other parts. They all have specific functions that they are playing in the human body, and this is what we look at under physiology. So physiology has to do with functions, okay? Has to do with functions of the body, whilst anatomy has to do with the structure of the various body parts. So anatomy is looking at the structure of the various body parts, whilst physiology is looking at the functions of all these body parts that we have in the human body. Okay, now let's dive straight into anatomy. All right. Now anatomy has different branches. Okay, it can be grouped basically into two main branches. One, microscopic anatomy, and then two, the macroscopic anatomy. Now if you talk of microscopic, what you mean by microscopic comes from the word microscope. So microscope in the sense that there are some systems or body parts or specific organs or cells in the body that you have to observe with a microscope, and that is the only way that you can observe it. Then there are other parts that you can observe which are large. That is the macro, which are large. Now the micro, let's put it in a tree form so that it becomes very simple for us. Okay, so we have microscopic anatomy, and then we have the microscopic anatomy. Okay, now the microscopic, we will look at what we call the cytology. That's one, and then we will look at what we call histology. Cytology simply is the study of cells. Okay, the study of cells, specific cells, and their actions and what they are doing in the human body, and its relationships with other cells in the body. That is cytology. Histology has to do with tissues, okay? The study of tissues. You know, tissues and cells are very minute in the human body. So the study of tissues, its relationship with other tissues, forming an organ or something. So that is basically what we mean by cytology and histology. Cytology for cells, histology for tissues. Now let's come to what we call the microscopy. So under microscopic, we look at what we call the embryology. We look at developmental anatomy. This embryology anatomy, anyway. Developmental anatomy. We look at pathological anatomy. We look at radiographic anatomy. We look at what we call the regional. We look at regional anatomy. We look at systemic anatomy. We look at surface anatomy. We will look at surgical anatomy as well. Surgical anatomy. Okay. Now quickly let's look at what embryology is. Embryology anatomy. This is a branch of science that is related to the formation, growth, and development of an embryo, and it studies after birth. Okay, so embryology has to do with the formation of an embryo in the uterus of a woman or a fertilized, a grown-up woman, and then its development stage after stage before it becomes a fetus, and then you deliver it. So this stage that it goes through. First trimester, second trimester, third trimester. There will be a time that we go through all these things and then you understand it properly. So the study of the growth of an embryo in the womb is what we term as the embryology anatomy. Now let's look at developmental anatomy. It studies changes in structure from conception or fertilization to maturity. So after a person is, or a lady has conceived, what goes on, the changes that goes on from stage after stage that the person is giving birth to, and then the stage that the human being goes through from childhood to adulthood until he dies. That is what we call the developmental anatomy. So you can simply see that embryology is found in developmental anatomy. Okay. All right. Now let's go to pathological anatomy. Studies organs and tissues to determine the causes and effects of particular disease. So this one, what you're looking at is specific disease that happens to specific organs in the body, and then we study it. Now in the hospital, we have a department we call the pathologic department or pathological department. That is where, or we simply call the morgue. When somebody dies, you take the body to the morgue, and then we are able to dissect and zoom into specific organs that we suspecting has the disease organism, and then we're able to know the specific organism. Then we can manufacture medications that can fight against those organisms in living human beings. Okay, so that's pathological anatomy. All right. Radiographic anatomy. The study of body using various imaging techniques. Okay, so this one is using imaging techniques to determine specific organs and how they look like, or how their actions is going on. Okay, so right, we can talk about X-rays under this one. Okay, so X-ray. We can talk of CT scan. Okay. And all the radiographics. Okay, so this one is basically a scan that we use to determine or to see specific organs and then how they are faring in the human body. Now quickly, let's go to what we call the regional anatomy. This is the study of specific regions or divisions of the body, emphasizing the relations with various structures. Okay, so an example is the muscles, the nerves, and also the arteries, how they relate with each other. So these are regions, specific regions of the body. Okay, so a typical example you're giving here is the muscles. How is the muscles related to the nerves? How are the nerves and the muscles also related to the arteries that we have in the body? Okay, so specific regions of the body. Now, it focuses on specific external and internal regions of the body, such as head or chest, and how different systems work in that region. So specific regions of the body function differently from other specific regions. Okay, so how the human head is able to function differently from the abdomen or the stomach, how the chest is able to function differently from the leg. Okay, so this is what this under regional, this is what we basically look at. Now let's go to systemic anatomy. This studies the body system by system, okay? So a typical example is the muscular system, which studies the muscles. So we basically look at the organ systems, all the organ systems in the body. Talk of integumentary system, endocrine system, muscular system and all the systems, okay? So a typical example is the muscular system that look at all the muscles in the body. Integumentary system looking at the whole skin and how it's faring. So that is systemic, okay? System after system, okay? Now let's look at surface anatomy. This is a study of external form of the body and its relations to the deeper structures, okay? Deals with anatomical structures that can be studied by sight without dissection, okay? So surface means the surface that you can see. A typical example is the skin. You can see the surface of the skin without using a microscope or any other magnifying equipment. You can see the skin and you're able to study some features of the skin. So that is surface anatomy. We don't dissect, but then we're able to look at the structure and its relationships with the deeper structures, okay? Now let's look at what we call the surgical anatomy, which is probably going to be our last type of anatomy that we are going to look at under microscopic anatomy. It studies anatomical landmarks important during surgical procedures. Helps surgeons prepare patients adequately for surgery to avoid unnecessary risk, okay? So surgeons don't just take the scalpel blade and start dissecting human body, okay? You have to study the specific landmarks that you will need to cut to be able to look into a specific organ. Let's say a neurosurgeon wants to look at the brain or wants to perform a surgery on the brain. There's a specific part of the scalp that needs to be cut. You don't just take your distance and scalp brain and start cutting anywhere, okay? If somebody wants to look at, or a surgeon wants to look at the abdomen, there are specific parts that you need to cut to be able to identify a specific organ that you want to attend to, okay? So these landmarks, the study of these landmarks is what you term as under surgical anatomy. Also, it helps surgeons to be able to prepare patients adequately before the surgery, okay? So that patients do not end up dying or something, or put patients at a higher risk, okay? So that is that about the anatomy and then physiology. So in the nutshell, we looked at anatomy and then we looked at the physiology part as well. So anatomy has to do with the structure, whilst physiology has to do with the functions of these organs. We came back down to look at the branches of anatomy, and then we looked at the two types, microscopic and the macroscopic. And then the microscope, we looked at what we call cytology, being for cells, histology for the tissues. And the macroscopy, we came to look at embryology, study of embryo, developmental from conception to maturity. Pathological, okay, study of diseases that are affecting the organs. Radiographic, all the scans that we can take. Regional anatomy, studying the organs region by region. Systemic, looking at the organ systems and their relations with others. Surface anatomy being the surface of the human body and then how it's related to the deeper structures, okay? And then surgical anatomy being the surgical landmarks in the body that we can always dissect the body into. Okay, so we end today's class over here. Thank you very much for paying attention, and then see you in the next class. Goodbye.